Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps get my channel promoted. I appreciate it. I'd also love it if you'd leave a comment. I'd love to hear what you think. So today I have a little short piece of really thick triangle wire left over from previous projects that's not long enough to do a bracelet by itself, but I thought, wouldn't it be kind of fun to incorporate it into a multi-metal one? So I'm going to make a copper and silver bracelet, and I'm going to try and do some interesting cutouts and inlays of copper with this, as well as attaching copper to the ends, because the piece I have is only maybe 2 inches or 5 centimeters long-ish. I'm going to make the ends copper. We're going to gradually taper it down on the ends, and like I said, do some little inlay kind of pieces out of copper, and we'll see how that looks. And then I'm going to put some thin sheet on the bottom to prevent the copper from turning your arm green. So I'm going to give that a try, and we'll see if that turns out. I'm not sure. I have hopes that it will, but we'll see. Before we get started, I need to thank some groups of people. My patrons over on Patreon are my core group of supporters, and I think they're awesome. It's a growing group of really nice people. I'm constantly impressed with the knowledge that they have, as well as how nice they all are. I appreciate not only their financial support, but also the great community that they've built over there. The other group is my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 12,350-ish, I think. That's amazing, and I never ever thought that that would happen, but I appreciate it. Not only the kind comments that you all leave, but also the contributions, like the Buy Me a Coffee and the Super Thanks. Those things really help with the cost of materials right now, so thank you for that. All right, well, let's see if we can make something cool out of this chunk of silver. And these are a couple of my design idea books that are available on my merch store if you're interested. I have found in recent years that if I draw something up in advance, I usually end up with a much better outcome. You can see this book is getting pretty full. I'm going to have to break out one of these new ones. And I just did get one of my new ones. We decided to start putting some conversion charts on the backs of things. So this particular model here has fractions of an inch to decimals, and then converts it to millimeters as well, if you're more of a metric person, in case I forget to say what the metric measurement is. But there's also one that goes from American wire gauge to millimeters, if you need to know that kind of information. And I definitely forget to say that sometimes, so check those out on the merch store. Today, like I said, I have this piece of triangle wire. It's number 2, which is roughly, I think it's 6.5 millimeters wide-ish, 6.55, I think, yeah. But it's only that long. I make bracelets out of these kind of this kind of wire sometimes by twisting it or whatever. There's actually, here's a link to my twisted wire bracelet if you're interested. There's also another one that has some pattern wire solder to it that is a different variation. This one, though, like I said, I have a little piece left over, and sometimes I'm stuck with a little piece of something, and I got to figure out what to do with it. So this one is, let's see, so that's about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 63 millimeters-ish. So what I've done then is I found the center of it, and I made the center part black. My plan is, and plans are subject to change sometimes, is from about here down here, which is, oh, I don't know, maybe a centimeter or so, maybe a little more than a centimeter. That's the area that I'm going to be flattening it, so it kind of tapers out from a triangle into kind of a more of a flattish aspect. And then I'm going to cut out a notch on either end like this at a 90-degree angle. It's 45 this way, 90 degrees if you look at this angle right here. That's a 90-degree angle. So then I have some of this copper sheet, which is 1.65 millimeters thick. I don't know what the equivalent is in gauge on that. I didn't look it up, sorry. But it's a little bit thicker than 18 gauge, I would guess. It looks maybe almost 16 gauge-ish. I'm going to use this for the ends of this thing, and I've already scribed out a 90-degree angle on there that comes to a point, so we're going to cut that off, probably using the saw. I don't want to pinch it much with the shears that I use sometimes, because that makes it bend and do some weird stuff. So we'll just use the saw and try and get it to fit right in there. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try, I don't know if you can see this, I marked out 2 diagonal slots that kind of go towards the center, and I also marked out about 1 millimeter up from the bottom a line to where it's going to stop. So I would like to inlay a piece of that sheet in here. So I'm going to try and cut out see if I can see how my sawing skills are today. Try and saw out that area and then slide a piece of copper in and solder it in place. So we have kind of a copper pattern in there as well. So should be interesting. We'll see if we can make it happen. But sometimes you got this little piece of something left over, you want to do something with it. And I thought this might be kind of a fun thing to try. So to start with, I think I'm going to try and taper this a little bit. I'm just going to use my bench block, my chasing hammer. We'll see how this goes. I'm going to look at it from the side, make sure it's a nice even slope upwards. And it looks reasonably flared. Well, maybe it's flared out a little more to that side, so let's see if it... That looks better to me. So let's see if I can do the same thing on the other side. Okay, let's see if I can file it just a little bit. Okay, so stuff is a little bit thicker than the end there, so I'm going to take it back a little bit. Maybe about let's measure from the center. Go from there to about 71 maybe. Like that. Kind of like that. So, measure twice, cut once, right? So I'm going to go over and saw this off. Apologize for my messy sawing area over here. I always apologize for it, but I never actually clean it up, so I must not feel that bad about it. See if we can't use one of these notches to get it started in the right spot. I'm just going to bring it over here. Okay, well, I'll clean them up with the file and then we'll figure out some notches here. Alright, filed those a little bit flatter. And I think what we need to do is we need to find the center line of this now that I've pounded it away. So if I extend that line, theoretically, if I line this up, let's see if we can do it on top of something. That'll make it easier because I can angle it. If I line up that center point and line up the two where these surfaces meet up with the spot on the corner there where I want it to kind of taper to, should be able to scratch it pretty decent. Let's see if we can do the same thing on this side. The other thing is, I have scratches on here, but the marker wore away as I was doing that, so I may have to go back and remark that one, but we're going to go over there and do a little bit more cutting, and then we'll come back and see if we can start piecing some things together. Cleaned up with the file. I'll be right back. Got those cleaned up pretty nicely. Now I redrew these on here. This is the part that I'm concerned that I won't be able to do a very neat job on and get a nice tight seam. The rest of it I feel like I can probably do okay. So I'm going to hold off on that just for a second. I'm going to go ahead and file these. You can see the line on there, but I put a mark that way, so I'm going to file this that way and that way. File. I'm going to saw it. Okay. Should be all warmed up on sawing now, right? I gotta find a way to kind of position this like this so it doesn't move much. Oops. Felt that one about to happen. Got a notch, and it looks like this will be tight, so that's kind of what I had hoped for, because I can file this a little bit thinner, but I can't make it a little bit fatter really. So I'm going to see if I can't clean up the inside of that hole a little bit using a file, and then we'll go from there. So I have these both fed into the slots I did. I spent quite a bit of time messing with the configuration of the slots so to get them as smooth as I could. I don't have the fine enough tools to get very detailed in there. So I did the best I could using some diamond burrs and using just my little flat file like this. But trying to get that angle at the bottom of the slot to just match perfectly is kind of hard to do. So got some fresh solder. I'm going to solder it in while I have it in place before anything moves on me. So if you've never been to my channel before, I'm doing this kind of late in the video, I use pick soldering a lot, which is where I use this is a titanium one, where you pick up a little bit of solder after you flux everything and then touch it where it goes. It's a super useful skill, and I'll put a link up there to a video about it if you're interested. I find it was something that took me to a whole new level, and I think it's worth learning how to do. Try to squirt a little bit behind there so that it gets to the other side of the slot. There's quite a bit of metal in that middle chunk of silver, so I'm going to spend a lot of time focusing on that before I even put the solder in there. So I feel like that side's pretty good. This side needs a little bit more. Two little copper wings sticking off the top of it. So I'm going to trim off most of that, and then let's solder the ends on. So be right back. So hopefully you can see I kind of ground those down a little bit so they're not sticking up so high. And I'm going to flux this, and I'm going to put a significant amount of solder on either end here to solder these to them. And then I'm going to figure out how wide I'm going to cut those. And then we'll put a bottom on the whole thing, I think, so that it doesn't turn your wrist green, because copper does that to you. So let's get this fluxed and solder. I'm going to cut myself some more solder. Solder for you people across the Atlantic Ocean. I think I have quite a few people in the UK who watch me, and I think I know I have a few in Australia. I think I have more than a few, maybe. So this is going to take a while to heat. It's a lot of metal here. that cool for a minute. Copper sure turns black when you solder it. Look at the back here, see if we got a good seam penetration. It looks like we probably did. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to solder a piece of sheet on the back of this, but I think before I do that I'm going to trim these off so they're a little bit narrower and maybe figure out what the final shape is going to be on the ends. Probably just kind of round them. But, yeah, so let's cool this off and then we'll trim those down. Sometimes when you butt metal up against each other, two different kinds of metal like that, they call it marrying metals or marriage of metals, which sounds pretty fancy. I guess if you don't get a good solid solder joint between them, then they're just dating still. That was oh my god! I just did a bad dad joke. That's terrible. Looks like we got a good seam there. Okay. So I think we could probably just kind of, I might use my little calipers here. Figure out about where I want that to, yeah, that's about right. I'm going to probably saw those off, but I'm not going to make you watch me saw those off because it's going to take a little bit. So I'll be right back. So I cut myself a strip of 26 gauge that's just long enough for this and just wide enough. And then I fluxed the back side of this to get it all nice and crusty. And I'm going to pre-melt some solder or sweat some solder onto this piece of sheet. And then I'm going to put this on top of it and we're going to heat the entire thing until it's really, really hot. And hopefully we'll get good flow up and down the entire thing. So, let me cut some more solder. I'm going to do one other thing. Copper, when it's being soldered down onto a flat sheet like this, has a tendency to kind of skate around. And to prevent it from skating right off of there, I'll put some T-pins in these little holes. If I can locate enough. Well, I don't think anything's going to go too far, so let's give it a go and see how it goes. I believe that we have a good connection all the way up and down it. We'll see. Casual inspection of the seam, it looks good to me, so I'm going to let this pickle for a bit, and in order to do that I'm going to bend these a bit. This middle part's going to be a bear to bend when I go to shape it, not the rest of it too much though. But what I'm going to do is do this so it'll fit in my pickle jar. That should work. Okay, we'll let that pickle for a bit, and I'll be back and we'll finish it. Okay, so here's my bracelet. It's going to be a little bit hard to see because it's so shiny right now because I just finished polishing it, to see like the slices of copper that go in here until it starts to kind of tone over time. Then it will stand out a little bit more. Honestly, if you give it an hour or two, it'll probably start to show up better. But I'm pleased with it. There's a few imperfections on it. I have a little bit of porosity in the solder joint there, a little there, and just a tiny bit there. So not perfect, but I'm reasonably pleased with it. I think it's a kind of a cool looking bracelet. But yeah, so there we go. I'll take some better pictures and put them at the end. Alright, well that was the mixed metal copper and silver cuff bracelet. I hope that you found that interesting and enjoyable. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And take a moment and check out some of my other videos. I have a huge catalog now. It's got 330 some videos. There's stuff that I think would be appropriate for beginners as well as people who are more advanced or just maybe looking for ideas or things they haven't tried before. So check out a few. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't. I'd love to have you as a subscriber. The other thing is, don't forget to hit the video description down below. There's some important links like where to download my new ebook that I just finished, as well as a link to my website, a link to a safety video, a link to Pepe Tools, and a link to my merch store if you're interested in getting yourself one of those nice design idea notebooks. So, alright, well thanks for watching. Take care. Happy silversmithing.